Spurs get a last-minute winner versus Brighton, and what must have been an incredibly frustrating game for Spurs. Brighton do not make it easy. Brighton were constantly pressing Spurs, and I've just watched the game on catch-up, and I might have had a few drinks in me, so hopefully this review makes sense. But I have to say, Sarr for Spurs looks like a very special player, considering how young he is. I thought he was absolutely brilliant today. I thought his goal was well taken. I think he added a lot to Spurs. I thought Romero had a really good game, and particularly the second half. I think Brennan Johnson's goal will give him much needed confidence. I thought Maddison showed elements. I think all in all, watching the Spurs game first half an hour, I don't think Spurs were good. I think Brighton dominated them. Then towards the end of the second half, Spurs were really good. At the beginning of at the end of the first half, Spurs were really good. At the beginning of the second half, Spurs looked much better, and I think the equaliser was coming. And then in the final minutes, it looked like it was going to end 1-1, and then Spurs got that winner. That showed that relentlessness under Ange. They found a way to make a winner, and Spurs already conceded 0.42 XG from open play. Brighton's only goal was the penalty, and I think Sarr was the stand-up player for me. I thought Romero had a really good second half. I actually thought Kulu, not brilliant in the first half, but in the second half he looked really good, did really well for the Sarr goal, and then got subbed off, but ultimately Brennan Johnson scored. So we're going to dive into the Spurs game and how they did. And the first thing I want to talk about Sarr, and I put Sarr down in a previous video as someone that's potentially one of the most underrated players. Now I'm just going to clarify this. I've had a few drinks in me while I'm recording this video, so if it doesn't make sense, I'm sorry, but I'm explaining myself. I think Sarr is looking at one of the most underrated Premier League players. I think whenever I've watched him for Tottenham, he's been really, really good. Everyone talks about Maddison. Everyone talked about Basuma. Everyone talked about Mickey Van der Ven. Everyone talked about Romero. But no one really spoke about Sarr. And today, I think his presence was noticed, not only just because he scored a goal, but I feel like the fact that he's 2021, he's going to get better and better and better. He's so young. But I think Spurs look better when he plays. He's got that energy. He's got those legs to cover ground. He just looks like a really, really good player, really, really hard-working player that's eager to get forward, eager to make things happen. And he's got that kind of Yaya Toure-esque thing in him, and I can see why he's been compared to Yaya Toure, because as much as I think Bentancur's a brilliant player, I looked at Bentancur today, didn't think he had the best first half. Not that he's a bad player, but he's been out injured, he's been missing football for a while. He just didn't look 100% fit. His intensity lacked it. I thought Bentancur started the second half really well, but wasn't great in the first half. Whereas with Sarr, he just has that intensity, and I thought he had a really good game. Particularly in that second half, he picked up a level, and I think Sarr and Son being back for Spurs, and Basuma as well, who could potentially go in that sixth role, will be really important, because Spurs, they dropped off a little bit recently, and they didn't look as good in this game versus Brighton. Yes, they got the win, but they haven't looked as good as they've looked this season in this game versus Brighton. Part of that is maybe because they've had so many injuries, so many players out, that the intensity isn't there. Some people suggest maybe they've been found out. I'm not sure. Some people suggest, you know what, this is just Brighton. They're the most high-intensity pressing team. It was going to be difficult for Spurs. But I looked at Spurs and I thought they didn't look as good this game, but they still found a way to get a winner. And that's a big sign. Even when you don't play at your best, you still win. And I looked at Spurs and I thought, well, Son's going to come back into this. They've got Maddison just getting back and he's warming up. Bentancur's warming up. Mickey Van der Ven's warming up. I still think that Spurs are in a very good position. I still think they're in a place where their next few games are winnable. They can go and get some momentum. They can build a streak. I think because Spurs aren't in Europe and they haven't got extra games this season, they're just going to get better and better and better. They've got Wolves, they've got Chelsea, their next two games, 2 winnable games. They've got Palace and then they've got Villa, which will be difficult. They've got Fulham, then they've got Luton. Lots of difficult games. But I saw Son come on today. World-class pass from Son in those final minutes to get the winner from a world-class player. I look at Spurs and I think they weren't at it today. They didn't play their best football. But I looked at Romero, I thought, well, he was brilliant. I looked at Vicario, I thought he was brilliant. I looked at Van der Ven, I thought he was brilliant. I looked at Bentancur and I thought, well, he had a good second half before he came off and he didn't have a good first half, but we know Bentancur's a good player. I looked at Sarr, I thought he was brilliant. I looked at Maddison, we know how brilliant he is. And then Son came on and Son added that different level of quality. And I feel like this season, particularly recently, Spurs have almost been heart attack FC. They make games hard for themselves. You don't know if they're going to win it or not. It looks like they're going to drop points and then they get that winner, or they play well and then they concede late to Everton. But you've got to remember that Spurs had so many players injured. They've had so many players missing at AFCON. And while Spurs' passing was poor in periods of this game, while there was periods of this game in the first 30 minutes particularly, where Spurs weren't great, they fought and they got the winner. Brennan Johnson got the goal, which is going to give him that much-needed confidence. Romero had a really good second half where he was putting in tackles. He looked like a beast. And I have to say this now, Christian Romero has this reputation of this guy that puts in fouls here, there, everywhere. But I have to say, he was brilliant today. He got Tottenham back into the game with just generally his pressing, his desire, his ability to never give up. I looked at Christian Romero today and I thought, that guy is a leader. I thought that guy's an important player. That guy's a guy that's known for red cards and fouls. And we've been praising Mickey van der Ven a lot on this channel, but I looked at Romero and I thought, that guy is a leader. That guy was brilliant today. He showed leadership qualities to get Spurs back in the game. And from minute 30, that end of that second half, I thought Spurs were going to equalise. They didn't. At the start, end of the first half, I thought Spurs were going to equalise. They didn't. I'm a bit drunk. I apologise. Beginning of the second half, Spurs started really well. And I thought Romero was a big part of that. QT Romero was a big part of that. And I think he's got this rep of being a guy that fouls and getting red cards. But when you watch him, he's a good player. I think Bentancur's a really good player, but I just don't think he's fully fit. I think Kula looks really good in the central areas, but struggles a bit out wide. And I think because Ange likes his wingers to play out wide, I don't think that Kula is 100% suited to Ange's system unless he plays central, but Maddison's back set. So Kula isn't playing central, but for that goal, Kula got in the central areas and had a big part in that Sarr goal. And I think Kula was growing into the game. He was just taken off. And to be honest, I don't think Brennan Johnson had a good game. And then he got that moment of magic at the end to win Spurs the game. But what I noticed as soon as Son came on was he had that level of quality. I didn't think the Spurs front three clicked today. I thought that it just wasn't working. It wasn't quite clicking. And I thought Bentancur, they needed that six to go alongside Sarr. And as much as I think Bentancur's a good player, it wasn't working today. All of a sudden, Spurs really grew into that game. Son comes on, and Spurs, it looked like it was going to end 1-1, and Son brings that quality pass, that quality moment. And while Spurs struggled the first 30 minutes and then got better, and they were struggling under the Tottenham press, and their passing wasn't at 100%, they still got the win. And from minute to 30 to minute 70, I actually thought Spurs were really good. I actually thought they had a really good game. You know, Brighton have been unbeaten in their last 31 games when winning at half-time, and they didn't win today. Spurs ended that streak. Brighton, when they're a goal ahead, are normally very comfortable. Spurs ended that streak. And I saw a lot of people giving Ange criticism and Kulu criticism and Bentancur criticism, but Kulu and Bentancur were a big part of that goal. And while Kulu and Bentancur didn't have the best first half, they showed their quality in that goal. They didn't have the best game, but they had that quality in them to contribute to that goal. While the front three didn't click, Son comes on and they go up a level. I think Spurs, despite it not being the most convincing performance, despite it not being the best performance of Spurs, I look at Romero, I think, really good player. Fullbacks, I don't think had their best game. I think Matar was quiet, but I don't think the fullbacks had the best game. But the fullbacks have been great this season. Mickey van der Ven, we know, is a good player. Basuma would give a bit more balance than Bentancur because Basuma is better at playing the sixth role than Bentancur. But I think Basuma and Bentancur are both good players. Sarr, I think, is a really good underrated player that's going to get better and better and has that Yaya Toure-esque thing in him. You've got Maddison as well. You look at Brennan Johnson, who's improving, got that confidence. You look at Werner, that I think gets in really good positions, but maybe didn't have his best game. You look at Richarlison, you look at Son, they can rotate on the left and they can rotate centrally. I still think Spurs, with one game a week, are in a very good position. Didn't play their best, got the win over the line. They have played good football this season. Maybe they weren't as good today, but I think they can get the win over the line. I look at Spurs and think, yeah, they need that right winger. They need that long-term right winger. Maybe they need another striker as well. But I think Spurs are in a good position. I've said this for a while, and I've been quite positive about Spurs. But I think they have really good players. I think they've lacked intensity at moments. They haven't been as good because of injuries, because of players at Asia Cup, because of players at AFCON. But I think Basuma, Sarr, Son coming in will lift Tottenham up a level. I thought Maddison coming back was brilliant. He played some really good line-breaking passes. Richarlison's link-up play is good. I think he did lose the ball a few times sillily. I thought Son has that quality. I thought, you know what? Probably 1-1 would have been a fair score, but actually Tottenham looked like they were going to win that game more than Brighton did. They brought that fight to the game. And while they were sloppy the first 30 minutes, the fact that they won 1-0 down against a side that, when winning, hasn't lost a game in the last 31 games and won that game 2-1, shows the fight, because Brighton's not an easy game. And I think it was a tight game for Spurs, but I thought Sarr put in a shift. I think Romero put in a shift, and I've watched the game on catch-up. And I think from minute 30 to minute 70, Spurs were really, really good. Didn't start the game well, ended the game a little bit iffy, but I think there was a lot of positives for Spurs to take. One game a week as well coming up. Key players back. Yes, they looked iffy. Yes, they're not playing as well as they did at the start of the season, but that could be to do with match fitness. Let me know your thoughts down below. I do apologise if this isn't my best video because I've just got back from a party, rewatched the game and filmed this. But yeah, thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.